Hey guys, welcome to another Q&A session from the Reaper blog. The YouTube channel just passed 9,500 subscribers. Thank you guys so much. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. I'm doing these videos every 500 subscribers, so it's about once a month, and it's so much fun to answer your questions directly and help the community with this information. The first question comes from Eric Chesick. He has a lot of electromagnetic interference with his computer, especially with guitar recording, with amp sims. It's just making a crazy amount of noise. I have the same situation with my Telecaster. I have to turn a certain angle. I have to turn all the lights off in the room. And I have a pretty clean system, or as much as I can. I have a dedicated circuit for this room. I'm running into a voltage isolator, and it should be pretty clean, but with a single coil Telecaster going into a high gain amp, sometimes it's just really noisy. So really that's the best thing you can do. Turn off any fluorescent lights, get away from your computer because computers put out all kinds of noise into pickups. Make sure your cell phone's not in your pocket because that can interfere with your pickups as well. So there's all these things, and you just kind of have to make the best of it. Make sure that that signal is loud and way louder than the noise, and in the mix it probably won't matter all that much. But definitely make sure that the noise is under control as much as you can. And if the quietest place for your guitar ends up being across the room or in a different room, you could try using the web control app that's new with Reaper to still control recording and things like that. Next question comes from Pat Autry. I was wondering if you've ever created a tutorial on how to detect room resonances in a recording. I found anytime I boost something 20 or 30 dB with a narrow Q and using a sweep, everything sounds bad. So there's got to be a better way. So definitely anytime you're using a boost of that much, everything's going to sound bad. So you might want maybe a 12 dB boost to find problem areas, and then see if it's still a problem at +6 or +3. And sometimes just notching something out and then toggling the bypass of the EQ lets you know that the problem was actually there to begin with and not something you're adding. Because definitely anytime you make a huge narrow boost with an EQ, it's going to sound bad. So when you bring it down to a reasonable level, make sure that the problem was there. The sweeping technique is just to help you identify problems that you're already hearing, just to isolate where that problem frequency is. Sometimes it's better to boost than to cut so you can hear it better. I do have a video on EQing electric guitars and how I use that sweep technique to find those nasty resonances. It's a little different than detecting room resonances because it's more like amp and cabinet resonances that I'm adjusting there because I think it was a direct recording. In a room, you're usually worried about bass resonances below 300 hertz. The way you hear that in a recording is, let's say a bass guitar's amp is in a corner and certain notes just make that bass cabinet rattle and stuff like that. Between different frets, it's crazy different volumes, and you have to do a lot of either multiband compression, surgical EQ, and things like that to really even stuff out. And a lot of that stuff can be avoided by just changing the placement of the amp in the room and investing in lots of bass trapping. In the description of this video, I'll put some links to some software that can help you test your room to find those resonances. There's one really great interactive one that will just play tones out of your speakers. And in my room, even though I have quite a lot of acoustic treatment, I can still make my front door rattle from certain frequencies. So check out the description for those links. Next question comes from Stephen Lewis. Any more incredibly useful custom actions? I recently set up one that's similar to the Pro Tools half-speed playback function. Let's go over to Reaper and I'll show you that now. Okay, so this action reduces the play rate of the project, which makes the items play slower and at a reduced pitch. So I have this set up so it drops it down an octave and plays it at half the speed. And I can hit it multiple times to, again, drop it down another octave. So I press Shift Spacebar, and you can see the play rate up at the top transport bar has been reduced to half. I can hit this a second time. And again. So it's just a really quick way of auditioning pitch drops and things like that without having to open up media item properties, changing the playback rate here, hitting apply, possibly having to change the item length and stuff like that. A quick way of auditioning it. Now let's look at the actual action, which is custom play half speed. 12 instances of the action decrease play rate by about 6% or 1 semitone, going down 12 semitones total, and then transport play. Pretty simple for that one. And then I needed an action to undo that to put the play rate back to normal and either stop or play as normal. So that's this action, transport, set play rate to 1, transport, play/stop. Pretty simple, but pretty useful, especially if you're working on sound design. Next question comes from How Audio Works regarding the Sound Toys mix I recently posted. I was wondering about EQing individual tracks or groups instead of doing it with the rest of the tracks playing. Aren't you worried that you're going to add or cut stuff that's necessary in the mix? Also, big balls for changing the guitarist's tone. What happens in these videos is not always what I would do if I was alone. I do definitely EQ in solo. I do it in the videos because it's easier to demonstrate what the changes are. It's easier to A/B, and definitely for subtle changes, you want it to demonstrate it in solo. But also, I've been doing this for quite a while, so I kind of know what I want or what's not useful with guitar tone and things like that. I kind of know that everything below, let's say 100 hertz, doesn't really need to be there with guitars because the bass or the drums is going to take care of that range. I know that anything that's kind of a sharp, high frequency, any sort of resonance can usually be taken out to make room for other instruments or just to sound better naturally. And often I'm doing multiple stages of EQ. I might EQ the individual guitar track, plus adding some shaping to the guitar group. Plus it's going through mix bus EQ, things like that. So it's multiple stages. It's a combination of knowing what I can demonstrate to you guys and what I actually need. And all this stuff constantly changes and evolves as the mix progresses. I wouldn't worry too much about EQing in solo as long as you're checking with the tracks and A/Bing to make sure that things are actually sounding better. And remembering that nothing is permanent in the mix because it can always be changed. It's only done when the deadline approaches and it's paid for. Question from Roman Aurora. Why is it advised to send a track to a bus? What is the purpose of the bus? For instance, I can apply effects to a bus, but why not just add the effects on inserts on the track? I can see busing for grouping purposes or as a sub-fader, but can you elaborate further? Can you provide some examples of why someone might want to bus in a particular scenario? I think I explained this pretty well in the Audio Routing Explained video, or in any of the mixing videos that I've posted, such as that recent Sound Toys video or my free mixing course. But in general, I'm using folders to group my tracks. All the drums go through a folder, and I can apply effects to the folder track. Essentially, all these tracks go through this track before going to the master, and I can control the overall level of those tracks. I can apply effects. I can mute them in one click. I can use the folder as organization because I can quickly collapse and hide these tracks. I'm also using sends to go to effects tracks. Reverbs, wideners, and delays are the usual ones that I put on separate tracks. One reason is that I can share the effect. Let's say I want reverb on my snare, my overheads, my hi-hat, or something. Instead of using 3 different reverbs or 3 instances of one reverb with the same settings, I can just use a send to one instance, lower CPU, and if I want to make any changes, I don't have to do it 3 times, I only have to do it once. And really, just by altering the send level, I'm changing the balance and changing what happens to that reverb as I need it. Often I'll have a template set up so that I have 3 or 4 different reverbs, small, medium, large, extra large, and I can just quickly send from any track into one of these preset effects and get a sound that I like immediately. That's much easier than inserting the plugin and then going through the different presets. And if I like that, I have to copy it to other tracks. There are things that make more sense to do in series. Reverbs and delays tend to work best in parallel. It's also kind of an analog workflow. I tend to consider those reverbs and delays to be kind of like outboard gear. And if you were mixing on a real console, you don't have 100 different reverbs to put on 100 tracks. You have one reverb that you can use sends from any of those tracks into that reverb or delay or whatever. But you don't have infinite. And these are the plugins that take the most CPU. So you want to use the least amount of them while still having lots of control, because you have the send level, you have panning on all the sends. So it's efficient. Plus it also works really well because it's kind of the traditional workflow that has been proven to work. That's the reason why I do it that way. All right, that's it for this video. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed these videos, please consider being a patron on Patreon, patreon.com/thereaperblog. I don't make a lot of money from doing these videos. I'm putting them out for free twice a week, and they take quite a lot of time to make. Patreon is kind of a way that the fans can sponsor the creators. So if you have an extra $2 or $5 a month that you would contribute to keeping the Reaper blog going, paying for my time, paying my rent, things like that, so that I can keep teaching you guys, it'd really help. Here's a list of the people that have supported the Reaper blog in the past month. Thanks again for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter, support on Patreon, and visit reaperblog.net for a lot more tutorials.